Jake Paul's back in the ring on Saturday night as he battles Ryan Bourland in an 8-round match in Puerto Rico. Now, that matchup is part of the co-main event featuring New York raised Puerto Rican women's unified featherweight champion Amanda Serrano. Serrano will be defending her belts in a 12-rounder against Nina Meinke. Let's break down these two fights with New York Post sports contributor and co-host of the Mandatory Boxing Show, my guy Bryan Fonseca, who joins me now. Bryan, how's it going?
Going well. Tonight's going to be exciting because Puerto Rico doesn't get a lot of fights. But
I know you're happy about this. We know that for sure. Yeah, we see.
We'll see how close these fights actually are, which we'll get into right now.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Bryan, let's start with Jake Paul because his last performance came against Andre August, who he knocked out in the first round back in December. Bourland, his opponent, has fought just once in the past 6 years, and that was in September of 2022. Is this fight a step up in competition for Jake Paul?
You tell me. Ryan Bourland's resume is not great. I got to give Jake Paul's team credit. They do a great job of finding these boxers who are like hardly pro boxers. Like, I know the advertisement was, hey, Ryan Bourland was a successful amateur, won Golden Gloves or whatever. When you look at his pro career, his record is beefed up by a lot of guys who are under 500. And I want to let people know under 500 in boxing is not the same thing as being under 500 in football or basketball. If you're under 500 in boxing, you're practically a straight up can. Like, dudes are just whooping your ass. Like, that's just how that goes. And Ryan Bourland, who's 17-2, this is the main thing here. Two main things. One, he hasn't fought in 18 months. Before that, he hadn't fought in 4 years. So this will be his second fight in the last 6-ish years. Okay. And the over-under for this fight, 1.5 rounds. That's it. So Vegas is telling you that Jake Paul should flatline this dude very quickly. And if you're like a legitimate pro boxer, that should not be the case. Ryan Bourland's been knocked out before in the first round of a fight that he was the A side in, and he lost to a journeyman, Israel Doofus, who was 8-3 in that bout, or leading into that bout. So Jake Paul should make quick work of this, and that's not a sentence I would have thought that I'd say if he's going into the ring against a real pro boxer at some point. But Ryan Bourland's he's just not that great, if I'm being honest.
Sounds to me, Bryan, like you're saying, this should be quick work for Jake Paul. And we'll get into the prediction in a second. And Ryan Bourland, he just might be out here to get the bag. That's what it seems like it might be. Now, Paul, he started his career, he's talked about his opponents, fighting MMA opponents, and then defeating them. But now he's turned his attention to professional boxers. What does winning this fight do for him as he looks to improve his record to 9-1? And what's your prediction for this bout against Bourland? Are you going with the odds makers and thinking that this will be pretty quick work for Jake Paul?
Let's see. Jake Paul is minus 2,500. I mean, unless you got $1 million to spend, it's probably not a money line I would play. And even if you want to bet him by knockout, it's like minus 600 is probably the shortest that you could find it right now. Because again, the over-under is 1.5 rounds. And he knocked out Andre August, who I was calling out that opponent being like, hey, that's not a great opponent either. But here's the thing, like, this is not even to kill Jake Paul or his team. This is what pro boxers do. Christopher Diaz, who I have a lot of respect for and is an actual pro boxer who's going to be on this same card, Pitufo Diaz, who's Puerto Rican. He's fighting a dude named Headley Scott, who's about 18-1 or something along those lines. And Scott has fought like one dude with an over 500 record. So his record is beefed up. Like, when you're coming up in boxing, this is kind of how you do it. So Jake Paul is not doing anything that's super out of the ordinary. It's just like when they're going to talk about, hey, what are they going to say now after the fight? Because we just beat another pro boxer. And it's like, you're cherry picking dudes, but it's fine because this is what you do when the money's behind you and you're the promotional A side and the business is on your side and you get to choose your opponents how you want to choose them. And ultimately, Jake Paul, what I seriously think he wants to do is he wants to compete for a world championship. And if he's going to beef up his record to a certain point in fighting these type of dudes, he'll probably make less money than when he fights, former MMA guys. But at the same time, if he's going to be successful in these challenges, like, yeah, the WBC may turn up and be like, hey, we're going to have you fight for a world title because there's a lot of money involved.
Yeah, I just wonder if that's good for the boxing fan when he actually fights a really good pro. But that's a story for another day that we can definitely get to. Let's go over to the ladies' side, where Amanda Serrano, we know she's one of the most accomplished women's boxers in the history of the sport. She's won 4 straight fights, all by unanimous decision. Does her opponent, Nina Meinke, have a chance to upset Serrano in her home country? And if so, how could she get it done?
Speaking of one-sided fights and overwhelming favorites, I don't think this is a step up in competition for Amanda Serrano either. I think Danilo Ramos arguably could be better than Nina Meinke, who is fighting against Amanda Serrano tonight. Now, that being said, I think this is a credible challenger. Like Nina Meinke is accomplished. She's been in the ring with some really good fighters in and around this weight class. Her one stoppage loss was to Katie Taylor in round 7 of about many years ago. Katie Taylor was just coming up as a pro at that point. And the TKO was not because of get her getting floored or anything like that. It was just she had a cut above her eye due to, yes, some punches and accumulation of punishment. And she was stopped subsequently because of the doctor, didn't want to allow her to compete further. For Amanda Serrano, this should be noted also, another 12-round fight. I was at the first one that she had with Danilo Ramos, where this is 12 rounds, 3-minute rounds. In Orlando, they did the same thing with Danilo Ramos in October. I thought Amanda Serrano was going to win by knockout. She did not. Danilo Ramos was tough, took every shot, lost all 12 rounds, but at the same time, it was a very interesting fight in that Amanda Serrano had opportunities to put her away and didn't. So it makes me wonder if Amanda Serrano is at the Manny Pacquiao stage of her career, where Manny Pacquiao was somebody who stopped knocking out opponents after he was doing that very early and often. After 2009, Manny Pacquiao, who fought for another 12 years, recorded one knockout in his career after 2009. So Serrano hasn't knocked out an opponent in 3 years, and I wonder if this is going to be a continuation of that, because Meinke, if nothing else, she's tough, she's crafty, and is going to be moving around the ring a lot.
All right, so giving Meinke some credit there, Bryan, what's your prediction here? Are you going with Serrano to make it 5 wins in a row, or Meinke to pull off the major upset in Puerto Rico?
No, Serrano's not losing this fight. Like, you know what I mean? Like, listen. I'm doing a little bit better financially than I used to be, and I would probably put up a significant amount of money for Amanda Serrano to win this fight, if I were like that level of a gambler. I am not, but I think Amanda Serrano, like if she loses this fight, it'll be the biggest upset in boxing this year. I don't even need to see what transpires between March and December. If she loses this fight, I think it would be the biggest upset in boxing in several years, probably since at least Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua was in Madison Square Garden in 2019, where we got that stunning knockout early on in that fight after Anthony Joshua looked like he was going to dominate Andy Ruiz early on with the knockdown. No, like Amanda Serrano's absolutely not losing this fight. And I think how she wins this fight is going to be interesting, because if you look at, betting odds, she's plus 130 to win by decision, minus 160 to win by knockout, roughly there, depending on where you look, but you get the idea. I think ultimately, if she wins by knockout, it's going to be late. It's going to be an accumulation of punishment stoppage. And I do think the referee here in the Puerto Rican crowd could be a little bit jumpy and want to get a stoppage there. But I think Amanda Serrano probably, wins this on points because, again, I question whether she's at the stage of her career where everything is just going to be a decision now. We're even seeing this with Canelo Alvarez, where he's not knocking out a whole bunch of people, credible people nowadays. So we'll see what happens in this fight. But Serrano's going to she's going to beat her ass, like no doubt about it.
All right, there you go. No doubt about it. You got these as 2 lopsided fights. We will see what goes down. Jake Paul, Amanda Serrano fighting in Puerto Rico on Saturday night. The only thing here for me, Bryan, I'm a little disappointed in you. I expected you to be in the home country to see this fight. You didn't make the trip down to Puerto Rico. Being the boxing aficionado that you are, I thought you'd be in the home country for this one. What happened, man?
Well, one, the comedy tickets that I have tonight, I'm going to see. Really good show, and it kind of just interfered with this event. And 2, give me some more even level fights, and I will.
Oh, I see. You're going to go to the home country when there's more even level fights and it's not that lopsided. Gotcha. I can't even be mad at you for that. That is Bryan Fonseca. Check out his work, contributor to New York Post Sports. Also, catch him hosting the Mandatory Boxing Show with Chantel Shand. Great job that he does with that there. Bryan, always good to talk some boxing with you. We enjoy the fights, and hopefully maybe not too lopsided. We will talk soon.
Thank you. Anytime.